What's good, my dudes? I wanted to talk to all of you about the executive functioning and chat to you about some of the strategies that we can implement in our day-to-day training so that we can think better on the mats and beyond. What is the executive function of our brain? We have several parts of our brain responsible for different things, and a very, very important part of it is our prefrontal cortex, which is located in the front of our heads. So if you have studied psychology at school or at uni, you would know that our prefrontal cortex is kind of like a conductor in an orchestra. So whenever we need to do something or execute, it kicks in and it allows us to make decisions and drive our actions forward. It actually takes a fairly long time to mature, around 20 years or so. And as we practice our combat sports, it actually takes a lot of our executive functioning. So we need to understand how can we take our executive functioning further and get better results as a result. Number one is planning. Why is planning so important to us as combat sports athletes? Well, it's very simple. Everything we do has to be planned. In order for us to succeed, we need to plan for that success to happen, and it takes a lot of brain power in order to plan. So in order for us to get most of our training, of course, we have to plan these things. We have to have a game plan that we develop together with our coach about what we're actually going to do on the day of a comp, what our training is going to look like for weeks leading up to it, what our nutrition is going to look like, and what our life as a whole is going to look like when we are planning to participate in a competition or perform at a higher level. Planning is key, and we have to really think about how we're going to structure our life in the days and weeks leading up to competition. Does it mean that we need to have adequate nutrition? Does it mean that we need to have a certain number of training sessions per week? We need to really think about planning before we execute. Planning is an executive function, and it's like our number one thing. Being able to really see into the future from where we stand in the present and be able to follow the steps of the plan is an executive functioning. So how do we do that? By planning diligently and sticking to the plan. All right, so executive function number two is our problem solving. Anything in sport is problem solving. As you guys know, we problem solve every second that we do sport. Every situation that we're in has to call for us to make some kind of decision to solve the problem that is in front of us. So the more we expose ourselves to opportunities to problem solve when our brain is in a calm state, the more likely we will be able to access this information or feedback on things that actually work when we are in a match situation. So for example, a lot of the drills that require you really think about what you're doing. So for example, one move at a time drill or whole drill when we're in a negative scenario and we're trying to solve our way out of it, is really going to help us problem solve in a calm and controlled environment so we can then take these skills to the mats on the competition day. All right, cool. So let's talk about executive function number three, which is your impulse control. Have you ever been in a situation where your coach tells you, "What did you do? Why did you do that?" And you're like, "I don't know, I just did it." Well, chances are you haven't quite developed that impulse control and you need a little bit of training around it. It is an executive function of your brain that helps you to be safe, but also whenever you're acting in impulsive ways, that often gets in the way of your progress. And very often, if you're a young person, a young athlete who is just learning skills, a lot of the things that you're going to do on impulse are not necessarily going to be helpful. For example, you could be using the wrong grip because you're used to that and you think, well, how else will I grab it? Or you're placing your body in positions that aren't beneficial for you to win the game. So this is again where impulse control training comes in super handy. How can we do that? we can simulate an environment where you're going to impulsively act, but we're going to slow down the process and think about what we're going to do next. So again, those drills when we have to slow down and think and do one move at a time and build positive feedback loops is going to be really helpful for us to be able to control our impulses. We're going to replace the ones that aren't helpful with the ones that are helpful. Let's talk about number 4, flexible thinking. As athletes in combat sports, we have to be really flexible in our thinking, because even if we have a super solid game plan, chances are things will still fail in the process and you need to have backup moves. Together with your coach, I would highly recommend talking about strategies that you can use whenever one move doesn't work. If A doesn't work, you need to still have B or C or sometimes even D responses that you can utilize whenever you are in a combat situation. We need to be extremely flexible also because we need to find these answers really, really quickly, right? So putting ourselves in situations and positions where we're able to execute plan. If A works, if A doesn't work, we do B. If B doesn't work, we do C. If C doesn't work, we do D. Having all of these answers allows us to be more flexible in our thinking and quickly solve the issues on the spot. Okay, so attentional control. Attentional control is super important, especially when we're in a really, really loud room with heaps of people. Everyone is screaming, it's a tournament, and you need to be able to separate from the things that are drawing your attention from all of the distracting sounds and connect with one and only one thing, which is the voice of your coach. So you can listen and hear and execute the instructions that are being given to you. Attentional control is really tricky, especially when you have so many external stimuli going at the same time. I would recommend creating that situation, again, in a safe environment where you feel like you can hear what your coach is saying, and then getting your teammates to cheer for you. When you're at the gym, having the 2 in the middle and then everyone else around, creating like a combat situation, like a proper tournament situation, is something that is being practiced a lot in my gym, and I think is highly beneficial in general because it allows you to concentrate on hearing exactly what your coach is saying and blocking out all of the external noises. Finally, cognitive inhibition. So cognitive inhibition simply means that you're blocking out all of the unhelpful thoughts that are going through your head when you're in a combat situation. When you're out on the tournament and you're trying to do your best and you have thoughts popping into your head, oh, I've already lost a match, or I already gave up some points. How am I going to come back from that? Stop. You need to identify those negative cognitions or those negative thinking patterns and replace them with positive ones. Think about the things that you do well. List 3 strengths that you have that are going to make you a more advantageous and successful athlete. How are you going to improve upon your performance? What are the things that you do well? Think about all of that and try to think about these things when you're in a negative situation, when you're down on points, or when you're in a bad position in jiu-jitsu and you're about to get submitted. Try to escape and think positively in the moment and pay attention to what your coach is saying. So finally, I wanted to talk about some of the things that make it quite challenging for you to access all of those executive functioning skills that you have, right? It's actually been scientifically proven that stress, lack of sleep, inadequate nutritional hydration can impede your executive skills. And it's very, very important to be on top of all of these things. But most importantly, if you're in a highly, highly stressful situation, and combat sports is probably like the most difficult of situations you ever can be in because of how overstimulating it is to be in a wrestling or a grappling tournament or an MMA fight, you have to have a plan of how you're going to regulate your emotions and have control over your emotions and your nervous system and bring it down to a calm state when you're able to perform and access all of those things that you do well and listen to your coach in your corner. So I would highly recommend coming up with a plan of things that work for you. So whenever you feel like you're crashing out You can grab an ice pack and put it on your chest or your back, or have an icy pool, or splash some cold water on your face, listen to some calm music, spend some time by yourself or with a trusted teammate or your coach, and really think about the things that you do well so you're able to perform as an athlete, because I know that you can. I know that you can.